Welcome to tonight's webinar. My name is Maureen Martin, and I'm a Programs Manager for CAN-DO Multiple Sclerosis. Thank you for acting on the belief that you are more than your MS by attending tonight's webinar, Fight Fatigue, Creating and Implementing New Strategies to Take Control, presented by Ann Mullenix. I want to start tonight's presentation by talking a little bit about CAN-DO Multiple Sclerosis. CAN-DO MS is an innovative provider of lifestyle empowerment programs for people with MS and their support partners. We are the start of a whole new way of thinking about and living with MS. A national nonprofit organization, we empower people to move beyond their MS by giving them the knowledge, skills, tools, and confidence to adopt healthy lifestyle behaviors, actively co-manage their disease, and live their best lives. Our renowned programs have helped thousands of people with MS reclaim their dignity, control, and freedom, and transform their challenges into possibilities. CAN-DO MS launched our new website last summer, www.mscando.org. Please visit the website where you can register for upcoming webinars, listen to archived webinars, check out our upcoming CAN-DO MS Lifestyle Empowerment Programs, share your CAN-DO promise, and learn ways you can contribute to or get involved with CAN-DO MS. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Ann will address questions and comments throughout her presentation and at the end of the presentation. We encourage questions and comments throughout. To ask a question, you type your question in the chat feature, which is located on the left of your computer screen. You should see a box on the left side of your computer screen that says chat. So to submit a question, type in the small box that says chat with presenters. And this presentation is being recorded and it will be archived on CAN-DO MS's website. You are more than welcome to view the presentation again, and if you've missed one of our other webinars, you can find the archived version on the website. For those of you who are attending live tonight, you will receive an email tomorrow with copies of this PowerPoint presentation. As many of you discovered when you logged into the webinar, new in 2011, you can listen to the live webinar through your computer speakers rather than having to call in. You should have all downloaded the document, What Are Your Fatigue Challenges? This document was in your confirmation and reminder emails. If you haven't downloaded the handout, please do so now. You can find the handout in the reminder email that was sent out yesterday. You would have just had this email open to connect to the webinar. On the right-hand side of the email, you will see downloadable files, and open the What Are Your Fatigue Challenges document. And Ann will go through the handout throughout this presentation tonight. But if you're not able to download the document, it's no problem. You can simply answer the questions on a sheet of paper. So the job of the live participants tonight is to, number one, submit your questions and comments in the chat box. Number two, complete the evaluation at the end of the webinar. And number three, review the webinar schedule and register for the upcoming webinars. So we have a great speaker lined up for tonight's webinar, Ann Mullenix. She is an occupational therapist from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and has been a CAN-DO MS programs consultant for 17 years, becoming involved when she worked with Dr. Randy Shapiro at an MS clinic at Riverside Medical Center. Ann has 20 years experience working in neurological rehabilitation and is currently working with adult outpatients at Park Nicollet Methodist Hospital in Minneapolis. So before we get started with tonight's webinar, let's do a few polls. So the first poll asks, please tell us about yourself. Are you a person living with MS, a support partner, a healthcare professional, or other? And you simply click in the box of the description that represents you. We'll give it a couple seconds to let everyone get their poll answers in. All right, looks like about everyone has answered. So about 95% is a person living with MS, 10% support partners, 6.7% healthcare professionals, and 3.3% other. So that's a great group we have. So the next poll asks if fatigue is one of your primary symptoms of MS. Yes, no, or sometimes. All right, looks like just about everyone has answered. So 71% says yes. A little over 6% said no, and about 22% said sometimes. And the last poll tonight, how often does fatigue interfere with your daily life activities? Is your answer 25% of the time, 50% of the time, 75% of the time, or all of the time? And we're asking these last two questions so Anne can kind of focus her presentation more to see who's on the call to get a better feel for how fatigue affects these participants. All right. So about 33% said 25% of the time, a little over 22% said 50% of the time, 28% 75% of the time, and about 16% said all of the time. So Anne, that should help you focus your presentation going forward. And with that, I will turn it over to Anne.
Thank you, Maureen. And welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending tonight's webinar. This is my actual first webinar. I have been an occupational therapist for 22 years, and I've worked with the Can Do Center for 18 of those years. I've given a lot of talks on fatigue management, a lot of lectures, workshops over the years, but never this webinar. So what I like about this webinar is I envision most of you in your comfortable home and possibly even laying down. So that is quite an advantage that you have, as well as in the convenience, obviously, of your home. So it makes it so easy and accessible. I can guarantee you that most of you would not show up if this was a lecture somewhere that you had to travel to. You know, when it's dark, it's winter, it's that time of night, it's hard to get out. So this is just such a great ability we have that we can still connect in the comforts of your home. But what will be a challenge to me is, number one, I can't read the audience, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be putting some of you to sleep. So my goal is to keep you focused and engaged. And the other component is when I do these workshops and lectures, what I love is integrating the audience into the talk, because you all are really the professionals. You are the ones that have to figure things out, that have the ideas that you implement that can benefit and give other people ideas. So having that in mind, obviously I have to keep talking through this, but I will allow opportunities for you to ask questions throughout this talk, as well as comments. If you have something that has been working for you, I really encourage you to share it so I can then share it to the rest of us, because that is really what makes a difference in these talks. So let's get started here. My first slides are basically validating that fatigue is or can be quite a problem and interference in your daily life. And of course, it's that symptom that people don't see. So sometimes you may even start feeling like you're making it up, or that you may be misinterpreted as being lazy. That is not so. And at the end of this talk, you are going to hopefully gain some tools and some seeds of change and encouragement and strength that will allow you to make this into a real situation for others, or a real symptom to others is what I meant to say. And it's so great that some care support partners are also listening in. That is always helpful, and I love to do that when I work with clients, is to have other people involved as well. But with fatigue and MS, it can impact all areas of daily life, and we'll go into try and explain more of what that means. But as you know, it's variable. Some days are great. Some days you don't have much fatigue at all. Other days you can't get out of bed. Or some days can be predictable in terms of you have fatigue all the time. It's kind of hanging in there and in the background, and other days it's present in front of your face. With fatigue, I know by working with people that it's different from my fatigue. I have tiredness, but I can't necessarily say that I identify with your fatigue because I don't experience it. But it is a source that people find they start isolating themselves because it's just too big in their daily life. And that is another thing we're going to talk about to try to remove that barrier, because that's the last thing we want our clients and people with MS to do, is to be isolated. We need to be engaged. Engaged brings energy. Fatigue can occur at any stage of the disease. It is common in the early diagnosis of MS, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's there at the beginning of the disease or 20 years down the line. It can come at any time. It is recognized as a debilitating symptom under the Social Security Act. Healthcare workers also may lack the time as well as knowledge needed to address this. So here I am as a therapist realizing that some people with MS that come in to get some rehabilitation, not every professional knows how to deal with that. We'll talk more later about some exciting new research and information that's coming out to hopefully change that. And hopefully you haven't had that encounter, but I'll equip you with some tools to change that around. And also, people describe it as fatigue like walking through cement, like I've never slept in my life. I'm sure you all have very specific identities to your fatigue. What you can do, fatigue is a force and a daily presence. It is overwhelming and it feels difficult to break down, to gain some control over. When we are fatigued, you physically may feel sick, depressed, or unmotivated. Sometimes thought processes slow and it may be difficult to think. Sometimes all people can really muster the energy to do is to rest. So I'm hoping that people can get out of the cycle of being imprisoned by fatigue by this lecture. And this goal is to plant seeds of small change. You know, at the end of the hour, if you can take away 1 to 3 strategies that you can immediately and realistically integrate into your daily life, then control over fatigue begins. And the small changes can lead into more changes because you have the energy to do it. But I also want you to know that there is no silver bullet to changing the fatigue. It's a combination of little tools unique to you that help manage fatigue and ultimately give hope and energy. And the other thing you'll hear me saying is energy more than fatigue. Changing the mindset, how do you get more energy into your day, instead of saying, how can I be less fatigued? It's more of a positive approach, and it gives you a little greater sense of control. So first step, it is real important that you have an understanding of knowing what your source of fatigue is. When you know or have an idea of why you're experiencing fatigue, then that will better enable you to know how to combat it, what tool to use, what strategy to use. So we're going to take a few minutes here to define fatigue. Primary fatigue or lassitude fatigue. These are words that you may have heard. And this is unique to MS. It still is not completely understood, but they think that there's a direct correlation with the inflammation process of the disease, central nervous system damage. And I think what people can identify to know if you have this fatigue, it is daily. It usually worsens as the day progresses. So for the most part, when I work with people, they say their mornings are good, and as the day goes on, it just gets more and more difficult. But it doesn't have to. Sometimes the mornings are hard too. It does worsen for some people with heat as well as cold temperatures. People also identify it as that it comes on suddenly, that it's an overwhelming feeling that is not relieved by rest. And it really interferes with those simplest of tasks in your day, getting dressed, taking a shower, preparing breakfast. After you've done some of these habitual everyday activities, people can feel exhausted. This is due to primary fatigue. Primary fatigue is a result of a direct how the disease is affecting your body. It is your body is working really hard to overcome, but it is directly related to multiple sclerosis. Okay, and we'll have chances to talk about this more as we in a little bit here. Now, I'm going to talk about MS-related fatigue. This is also, you may have heard the term as secondary fatigue. Neuromuscular fatigue. Now, this is a result of nerve conduction is interrupted. Not all nerve conduction to all muscle groups, but it could be some muscle groups. Some people experience it in the legs. Some people experience it in the fine muscles of the hand. But it is an interruption of smooth nerve conduction flow to the muscles, and we call it short-circuiting. And I can describe this as someone walks a block and they're fine. The next block, you feel like your legs are becoming heavy and you're slowing down. The third block, you need to sit because your legs are giving out on you. Another MS-related fatigue is called substitution fatigue. And this fatigue is due to when there are weak muscles, other muscles that are not weak or that are strong and that don't have problems with nerve conductions are overcompensating. So they're working harder than they normally would have to, and thus they fatigue quicker. There's also cardiovascular fatigue, and this is mainly people become deconditioned. You may find that you are not as active as you used to be, or you have the muscle weakness, you have balance issues, so you find that you're drawing back and you're not as active. And then overall your body just gets deconditioned like anyone would if they have MS or not. But if they're not active and exercising, so to speak, you find that you're just out of shape. I talked a little bit ago about heat sensitivity. There's an increased core body temperature. And people find it's not just heat, it can be cold as well. If your body is not regulating temperature, your body's working harder, and thus you become fatigued. I also want to play in here is cognitive fatigue. We're going to talk a little bit about cognition down the line in the talk, but cognitive fatigue is real. People find it harder to concentrate, or they have a mental drain because you're reading something or you're attending something that you have to think real hard and you just feel drained. Luckily, that can be, with rest, come back and overcompensated for, but we'll talk more about cognitive changes in a little bit. Some other types of fatigue, they can be known as secondary fatigue, but here I also said common fatigue. And what I mean by that is this is fatigue or tiredness that anyone would experience or can experience. But with the diagnosis of MS on top of normal fatigue, it is so much greater, it's so much more intensified, and it escalates fatigue. And what I mean by that is, number one, if you have a health condition other than the MS, like anemia or thyroid disorders or sleep apnea, you know, that's hard enough without the disease. Put an MS on top of it and you get even more fatigue. People don't sleep well at night. Sometimes, you know, you wake up from a bad night's sleep, oh, you're tired. But if it's continuous, consecutive, and a lot of people with MS don't sleep well because they have to get up to go to the bathroom so much, or they wake up with leg spasms or pain. Your sleep is so interrupted, you don't get a good solid rest. Thus, your fatigue is greater. Depression. Depression can create fatigue. Depression is higher in people with MS. Something we'll touch on a little later, but depression, your mental focus can change. So keep that in mind and don't discount it. Medication side effects cause fatigue. Some of the interferons, right after you give yourself a shot, you can have fatigue, but that would resolve. But other medications that have side effects would be even depression pills, medications for depression can cause side effects. So it's really important that you keep aware of what you're taking and what the side effects are and talk to your doctor. Nutrition, poor diets can create more fatigue and even greater fatigue with MS. Stress. Everyone knows stress can cause fatigue, internal stress or external stress. So we're going to talk about this as we go along to see how we can try to take control over some of these areas. Another thing I didn't mention, pain causes more fatigue. Infections cause fatigue. There's a lot. I mean, what doesn't, huh? But in conclusion, knowing or having an idea of the foundation of your fatigue can help guide you in knowing how to reduce or even eliminate it. If you still don't know, if I kind of quickly went through, oh, there's primary fatigue, there's secondary fatigue. If you're not getting these ahas, oh yeah, that's me, then what I recommend my clients to do is to analyze their days. And I do tell them to keep an activity diary for at least 5 to 7 days. A week is the best. And when you write down every day what you're doing and when you're doing it, I can guarantee you, you're going to be able to look back at that week and see where your patterns of fatigue occur, and maybe then find out why they're occurring. Are you trying to do too much at a period of time where you don't have as much energy? So that's a really good activity that people find to be very beneficial. The other thing you can do is analyze your sleep patterns. Take a look at, are you interrupted a lot at night? How many hours of sleep are you getting? Do you feel you're getting good quality sleep? Now, speaking of fatigue, I don't know if some of you have seen this. I'm assuming some have, but this is called the Fatigue Severity Scale. And it is a quick method of evaluating the impact of fatigue on yourself. There are 9 statements. And what you do is you rate the severity of fatigue symptoms. So it's based on a week, the past week time. And you rate it from 1 to 7. And you rate it at how accurately it reflects your condition over the week. So if you can see on this, hopefully it is large enough. Number 1, if you circle a 1, that means that you strongly disagree with a statement. If you rate a 7, that means you strongly agree with a statement. When you have addressed all 9 questions, you can total your score. And if you have a score that is less than 36, you may not be suffering from fatigue. If it is greater of 36, you may need further evaluation, and I would suggest that you go talk to your doctor about it. So that's kind of a quick reference, but it's just one reference. Don't base all your fatigue on this. Okay, so now what I think we should do is take an opportunity here to pull out that worksheet. I made it very simplistic so it's easy to follow and you don't have to write so much. The first section of the worksheet identifies or wants you to identify your sources of fatigue. You know, realistically, we have more than one source. That's true for anyone. But I'm hoping with that quick little snippet of looking at different fatigues, you may be able to highlight things that stood out in your mind that could be causing your fatigue. Maybe it's that primary fatigue. Maybe it's your nutrition. I'm not eating well. Maybe it's the stress level in your life. So why don't you write things down? You don't have to, and writing may be challenging for some of you too. You may want to comment to someone in the room next to you or tape record your voice. But I do find when people write things down, they're better able to follow through on what we're talking about. I also want to give this an opportunity to answer a few questions, if there are any, on what we just spoke about or comments. And I'll hand that over to Maureen.
We just have a couple questions and one comment. So I'll start with the comment. And we heard, every day I try to do at least one thing to benefit my family each day. So that's a good way.
I like that.
And then the 2 questions. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's a great comment, and we'll I'm going to bring that up later on in the talk because it will address quality and happiness of life, I think.
That's great. So 2 quick questions regarding the core temperature. When you were just talking about that, do you become more sensitive to temperature changes?
So not everyone does. It is a symptom that some people, as I mentioned earlier, have difficulty regulating temperature, but it doesn't affect everyone. You know, at first we thought it was just extreme heat, And you may be aware there's a lot of cooling devices out to help with regulation of that, as well as just drinking a lot of cool fluids can make a big difference. But we also now find that the extreme cold, and if you live in Minnesota where I live, you would be very sensitive to the cold in this day and time. Did that answer the question fully?
I think it did. And the next question asks, should traveling make you more fatigued than usual?
Of course it does. Oh my gosh, it does. But I don't want anyone to stop traveling. There's a lot of resources and great advice books how to travel when you're dealing with MS or a disability or fatigue. And it's something that you just have to probably take more time in planning out the details, planning out what you're going to pack, how much you're going to pack. And I think as we go along in this lecture, as I talk about some strategies, they'll come to mind what you can implement into traveling. But think about it. Traveling, you get out of your routine. You are sleeping in foreign places that you may not sleep as well. Your diet, you're not eating as well. It's stressful. It's tiring, as well as being beneficial and good and fun. But you do have that background of fatigue that can be greater when you travel. Okay, why don't we move ahead now? And then again, we'll still be taking questions as we go along. So if you're still not quite sure where your fatigue is coming from, take some time to journal it, or use a daily planner. I love daily planners, writing it down, looking at your rhythms of your daily life. Okay, now we are going to start thinking of and working on strategies. So we have an idea of where this fatigue is coming from. Now let's take a look at how we can put more energy into our daily lives. We must be willing to make some behavior and lifestyle challenges. A big part of occupational therapy is to teach people how to adapt, how to modify activities. Our goal is to get people the result that they want, to get people to the place they want to be, but the process of getting there may change. And that's what I have to help work people on, being open to that, being flexible to that, being creative. And it doesn't necessarily happen overnight. It could be a process of change. But that's the framework I want you to be thinking about as we go about the remainder of the lecture. So how do we break it down? What is the most easy thing to change and take control of? And let's look at normal fatigue. And again, normal fatigue, what is normal fatigue? What I mean by this is fatigue that everyone experiences, yet it is so much more intensified by MS. It is worsened with MS, and it is not what everyone experiences, if that makes sense. It's also called the secondary fatigue. First thing that is so important to stop to think about is your overall health. Is it being managed? You know, most people have a neurologist, but because they get so focused on the MS, which I understand because it's a daily managing situation, but they tend to then neglect the other areas of the body that need to be taken care of. You know, people with MS are just as prone to getting overall health conditions as the rest of the population. So I encourage you all, if you don't have, get a primary physician. Make sure you have another doctor taking care of your overall health. It can really help you with your fatigue and managing some MS symptoms. I also have on this slide complementary alternative medicine, and this is also known as CAM. I am not a professional in this area, but I want to bring it up and highlight the excitement I have for alternative medicine because it is complementary to your current care by your doctor, and there's so many ways now or abilities or resources that we have to be able to take care of ourselves. And let me just define complementary medicine may mean massage, it may mean acupuncture, biofeedback, herbs, vitamins, minerals. This is not to replace your care from your doctor, but it's used to help symptom control, and it has great advantages for fatigue management. Our next webinar, which is on the 8th of March, is all about complementary alternative medicine. So I encourage you to write that down and remember that, because I do think that you'll find that to be a very interesting webinar as well. Okay. Next slide. We're still talking about normal fatigue, and I want to mention nutrition. I'm not a nutritionist, but I think it has a lot to do with fatigue when I work with people all these years. And I want, if you feel nutrition could be a source of fatigue, look at your eating habits. Are you eating a lot of refined sugars or trans fats? Look at labels. Start being aware of processed foods. Our society is just turning to processed foods. So seeing if you can cut this down can give you more energy. Eat foods that boost your immune function and lower inflammation. And basically, those are the foods that we should be eating for everything. Those are more fruits. Those are more vegetables. They're proteins. These are foods that benefit us in every which way. So think about getting those into your diet as well. Make small changes. Don't expect to change everything at once. Just add one thing to your daily diet or take away one thing. Small, small changes. You'll feel like you'll be getting somewhere. If you feel overwhelmed about this, or you're maybe feel out of whack with your diet, seek a nutritionist. How do you find a nutritionist? Ask your doctor. Your doctor is the source for a lot of information, or your local MS chapter. MS Society chapter, I should say. Nutritionist is a great idea, and it may be 1 or 2 visits with that person, but they can really help restructure your diet. We also have had a webinar on nutrition, and Baldwin Sanders gave it. I'm not sure which one. So it is on our website if you are interested to take a look at that. Okay, increased fiber, always a good thing. Always a good thing for everyone. Now, still speaking of some secondary fatigues, we look at stress. Stress is present in everyone's life. We all need stress because it really is a motivation to survive. Yet in our culture, as well as there's just too much stress. I don't think I really have to go in to define that, and we all understand that. Especially our society that cultivates such extreme expectations. And then here you are with MS. So I can't imagine how some people have to deal with stress, because you're always thinking, can I continue working? How are my relationships? I feel financial burdens. So it just keeps escalating. Stress is real. And this can take a whole lecture in itself. Be aware of your stress. There are things we all can do to lower it and keep it a little bit in check, but it is such a source for fatigue. Depression. I mentioned depression a little bit ago. It's common, but it is very common in MS. More than 50% of people will experience a major depressive episode at some point during the course of the disease. Now, it doesn't mean you get diagnosed with MS and you have depression. It doesn't mean 20 years down the line you're going to have depression. It doesn't correlate with the disease process. But there is some connection to what's going on with the changes in your body that create some depression. The other thing I think is that it can be confused with fatigue. Am I just fatigued and so I'm kind of down? Or do I really have depression that's causing the fatigue? It can be very confusing, and I want to validate that. But it is more something that you find every day, that you're losing interest, motivation, desire in pleasurable activities. Your appetite's changing. You eat less or you eat more. Those are just a few symptoms. What I want to make a point of saying here is that if you feel that this could be a possibility, talk to your doctor, because it is treatable. That's the great news about it. It's treatable, and it can change. So don't underestimate that. Medications. A lot of medications have side effects of fatigue. Make sure you talk to your doctor or your doctor's nurse. Make sure they're looking at all your medications. Make sure they know if you're taking vitamins or supplements or herbs. They need to know all of that. It does play an effect on one another. So it's very important that you would take that in consideration. Sleeping is a big subject of fatigue and needing to change. Now, my rule of thumb when I work with people, I say if you're getting up more than 2 times a night, some of you may laugh at this because some of you may be getting up. I know people that get up 10 times a night. But more than 2 times, I feel that you need to start focusing in and looking at your sleep and trying to improve your sleep patterns. My rule of thumb. Now, it's also a time that you talk to your doctor. If you have restless leg, talk to your doctor. He can help you. He or she can look at different alternatives to eliminate that. Spasms, bladder, these are concerns for your doctor. Some things that I can recommend for you to do is to set up some rituals. Rituals of going to bed. Turn off the computer, turn off the TV within an hour of going to bed. Your brain gets activated when we're watching and looking at this, and it's harder for your mind and your body then to settle down. Get into a pattern of relaxation, deep breathing. Some people find relaxation tapes to be helpful. Whatever it is to relax you, figure that out and get in the habit of practicing them on a nightly basis. A warm shower or bath, although when I say that, some people laugh that that could be more stressful than good. But just think of ways, warm milk. Don't eat 1 to 2 hours before you go to bed. That can create a difficulty getting to sleep. And also alcohol. I know some people think that alcohol can calm you down and get you prepared for sleep, and it actually does the opposite. It disrupts your sleep. So look at your intake of that. Okay. Basic needs are often overlooked. I want to just do a little wellness pitch here. Some of the changes we need to make are often the most simple and yet overlooked. Our bodies have such a capacity to heal. And I'm not saying that you can heal yourself from MS. I'm not saying you can heal yourself from fatigue, but you can energize yourself more, lessen fatigue, if you take into consideration your whole self. There's a lot out there now, and you may be more aware of this. Have you heard of being in the present, mind-body connection? This is becoming more popular within mainstream Western medicine, and it's not religious-based, it's not New Agey, but it's just saying the power of our bodies for healing. And you know what I do with people, no matter what I'm working with that person on, no matter what they have as a diagnosis, I first and foremost always talk to them about breathing. I talk to them about calming down with breath. I talk to them about helping regulate pain with breath. I help them refocus their mind and their body with their breath. And what I mean by that is I just start off by saying close your eyes. And just take a few minutes just to feel the pattern of your breathing. The life source, you're alive and energized. You feel yourself breathing. What is your pattern of breathing? And then I take it to the next step with breathe in for a count of 5, pause, let it out for a count of 5. This is marvelous in terms of relaxing the body. And the best thing about it is you can do it wherever you are. You don't have to buy anything to do it. It is with you, your breath. So if you practice it, you got to do it more than once or twice. Be aware of your breath, and it can really make some effects on energy. Seek out enjoyment. Oh, we'll be talking about this. It's very common for people to, if you're fatigued, how are you going to save energy? You're going to save energy for the task that you feel you have to do. Tasks that we feel we have to do are our self-cares, household management, work. And you know what gets eliminated is leisure. And we eliminate things that give us pleasure. And when we do that, we have found there's OT research that has found our well-being is more attached to our leisure than it is our occupation of work or these day-to-day mundane things. Sure, you got to balance it out. We'll talk about that. But I just want to, am I planting any seeds here? Are you or have you eliminated leisure and enjoyment from your life? Meditation, relaxation, yoga, Tai Chi, these are great methods to become more aware and in tune to your body. And what's exciting too is a lot of the MS chapters have adaptive yoga classes, adaptive Tai Chi classes. And so you can just go to your chapter or on the website to see if there's one near you. The one thing before I change the slide is just to conclude by saying take time off. Take time off from MS. MS is 24/7, and you have to force yourself to give yourself a day rest or to give yourself time throughout the day that you don't think about your MS. Just be freed of it. Easy for me to say. I'd love to see if people have comments for how they do that. Because we have found too, negative feelings trigger stress hormones. Positive feelings trigger dopamine, which protects the immune system. So changing your mindset. A comment earlier was I try to do one thing a day to benefit my family. That's giving to another. That's very important. That feels good. And the family benefits. That's great. So that the person who commented on that is obviously taking this in consideration and thinking about this. Relaxation, I cannot stress more to help with fatigue, to help with energy. The last slide we went into this a little bit. Find what it is for you. It's not the same. It's unique for you. It's not the same for everyone. But be aware of some strategies maybe that you can put as a priority. And I'm talking on a day-to-day basis. Take time for yourself. I have at the end of the slide mindfulness stress reduction. If you get a chance, there is a doctor whose name is John, Jon, Kabat-Zinn, Z-I-N-N. And he has done an amazing job at creating tools, and he claims he's using the wisdom of your body and mind to face stress, pain, and illness, and has all these research studies on relaxation. I mean, it's what we were just talking about with your breath and meditation and yoga, Tai Chi. All of these practices have come together, and they've put research, and there's even some research on MS and how it lowers symptoms or lowers stress, lowers fatigue. So I suggest looking him up and looking into what he has, or even if there's a class in your area. It's fabulous. We are multidimensional, and to be well, we need to look at all areas of our being. We've talked about our physical side. We've talked about nutrition. We're going to be talking about exercise and fitness a little bit more here. Positive lifestyle habits. Social. We just talked about how important it is to engage in pleasurable activities, how important it is to have relationships, intimacy, respect. Spiritual. We've talked about that a little bit, incorporating meditation or prayer, relaxation. That's very unique to each individual, but that is a part of our being. Intellectual. We need to be cognitively stimulated. You know, new challenges, learning, never stop learning. And our emotional side, stress management. We've talked a lot about stress. And also it says in this slide, accepting limits. Accepting your limits, but counteract that by saying what you can do. What are your strengths? What are you able to do? Because, you know, life is a continuous process of change and adapting for everyone. My old me, I'm not the same as I used to be. And as we go through these changes, there's always kind of some bumps, but then we acclimate and we find ways to adjust, and then we carry on. So it's a continuous process, but I like this slide because it also helps people be aware of, wow, I am really out of balance here. I'm not attending my social side or my intellectual side. And again, we can't be all sides perfect all the time and working on every area equally. That's not the truth. Some areas are going to demand more time or more effort, or we're going to be concentrating on them more. But we have to give and take, and it's just making sure we always are, to some degree, balancing in the different areas of our well-being. I want to talk a little bit here about communication. It is important to educate others. But we need to know when and where to talk. People can't read our minds. You can't read other people's minds. So for a care partner, family member, coworker, when you are fatigued and you cannot muster the energy to go out, instead of being the no fun person, maybe you can start explaining whatever and however that is and educating why this is so. And I find when I work with people, it is easiest to communicate your fatigue when you're comparing it to something else that is identical to others. In the beginning of the lecture, I had a quote, "I feel like I'm walking through wet cement." When you are tired and you can't go on anymore, that's a good visual for someone that doesn't have MS and understands the specific fatigue of what it feels like. I also have people rate their fatigue. And I find this also to be very beneficial. It's rating your fatigue on a scale from 1 to 10. 1 being no fatigue, you feel great, 10 being the worst. And if you can get in the habit of using that measurement, it can help gauge, and your family members can get an idea of, oh, Mom's got some bad fatigue right now, I'm going to stay away or I'll do my chores as I'm told. So that's another great area, a way of communicating with others. Creating energy, we are still moving into now, we're going from our, excuse me, I got the delay on that slide kind of threw me off. We were talking about normal or secondary fatigue, and now we're going to keep talking about secondary fatigue, but we're going to talk more about the short-circuiting fatigue. There was a comment that someone feels, you know, I don't have that overwhelming tiredness all day long. I feel it in my legs, and I just feel like I can't walk much and my legs just want to give out on me. That's that short-circuiting fatigue, and that is related to the nerve conduction. The first thing I do want to bring up, and I know this is hard for a lot of people, and I'm not pushing it, but I want you to think about, are you using a walking device? People have a hard time transitioning into that, and I understand that. But remember my comment earlier, therapy is helping people get the result they want to. You may just change the process of getting there. So if you use a cane out and about, or even a scooter when you go grocery shopping, or it allows you to go to the theater, it allows you to do what you're doing, and it's saving energy. It's not making you more disabled. Some people also think if they use a device, well, you're not going to be using your muscles enough and you're going to get worse. And that is a wrong train of thought. Walking devices, aids, help you save energy and allows you to do more. Substitution, we talked about earlier how you have weak muscle groups and then the stronger muscle groups are making up for the weak ones so they get fatigued quicker. This is a big component of the Can-Do programs. We have a lot of research on exercise, and we do a lot of our program is geared towards giving people exercises to go home with, because there is ways you can build up muscle strength. But the point I want to make here is people feel like it's all or nothing. If I can't ride a bike for 30 minutes, I can't do it. Most often we set people off from these programs who haven't been exercising for a while, and we find 10 minutes. Your body can benefit from 10 minutes of exercise. But it is so important that you know what exercise to do. So with saying that, is it strengthening? Is it cardiovascular? These are a lot of important questions that you need to have answered. So I would direct you to your doctor, then to a physical therapist or an occupational therapist that can get you going on a specific exercise program to build up the strength that you can, because you can. And you can also improve your balance by building up strength. Heat sensitivity, we've talked about that a little bit, but there are many neat devices out there to help cooling. And you'll be getting tomorrow, in addition to the lecture, some resources on the web where you can find this too. Okay, cognition, thinking skills. This is a lecture in itself, but I didn't want to ignore it. I want to talk about how you're thinking in terms of, it is so common for people to tell me that they can't concentrate like they used to. They're forgetting things. It's embarrassing. It makes people angry. It's isolating. You can't find the word you want to say. It's common. It is very common with MS. But there are changes that can be made. Number one, and this can apply to everything, simplify your daily life. Again, our culture cultivates stress and unrealistic expectations and to do more and more and more. You know, there's also this front of people that are saying less, less, and less. Simplify your life. It's amazing what it does to your mental health, to your physical health. Simplifying, and don't multitask. Multitasking is overrated to begin with. If you're having a difficulty concentrating and you're finding you're getting that mental fatigue, do you have a lot of noises that you're competing with around your room? Turn off that TV. Turn off the radio. Try to get into a quiet spot if you're trying to read and concentrate away from others. Eliminating environmental distractors can make a difference. Are you trying to focus at a time when your fatigue is present? You know, it is, try to really make that time in the morning or after your rest when you really have to concentrate and you really have to step up. Because it is true, your mind is working harder. And when it works harder, it's going to exhaust quicker. So just be aware of that and careful. Using a daily planner is excellent. I've alluded to using a daily planner when you're looking at your activity level. Keep yourself organized on a calendar. Write things down, your priorities, what you have to do, when you're going to do it, at the times that you have the most energy to do it. Write things down. Keep a pad of paper and pencil next to each phone in the house. Always carry around the ability to write something down. If writing is taxing for you, get a little dictaphone. You can get them for $20 at like a Target or a Walmart. And I know there's going to be time and places you can't pull that out and start talking to yourself. I get that. But sometimes just recording your voice to remind yourself of things to do could just be quick and easy, or even at the office. What I do find people do is do too many Post-it notes. So when you get a wall full of Post-it notes, that looks like a blank wall. So think about really simplifying that as well, not having too many notes around the house for yourself or at the office. Daily planners, though, are great. And there's so much technology out there, and I'm sure you have some great comments of what you use to help you stay focused and to help you improve your memory. Keeping emergency tools in your back pocket is good too. And what I mean by that is just saying, if you feel like you can't concentrate, you can't pull up the information the way you want to, just say, I'll get back to you on that, or I need to look at that and I'll get back to you later. Stuff like that, some automatic responses that you have that you can just throw out there. So those are handy, I have found. The last fatigue, well, the last in this lecture that we talked about, or the first that I talked about earlier, is the primary fatigue. What do you do to combat and increase energy and try to take control over this lingering fatigue that is just like the big elephant in the room, right? First and foremost, and it's not on this slide, is I do want to speak about medications. The interferons have helped with this fatigue, but there are also other medications that doctors are using when people experience this daily fatigue. So I do suggest, I'm not an advocate, I'm not saying get on more pills, but it is something that you should discuss with your doctor, number one, if you haven't already. There are some real specific medications used, and I've had people that use a couple at different times, and it's amazing it changes around their fatigue, so it does make a difference. But from a conservative standpoint and from a therapy standpoint, what my role with you is teaching you about energy, it should be conservation. So not energy consumption. That's fatigue consumption, but energy conservation. And to help you understand how do you prevent fatigue from occurring, and doing it by planning, prioritizing, and pacing. Planning your day. Using that daily planner. I keep saying that. You may want to get one if you don't already have one. Finding out what are those times of day that you have the most energy. Plan the most important activities at that time. Palm Pilots, computer, plugging it in, however you want to use your planner, whether it be the computer one or just a handheld one. Budgeting your energy. This is a big concept in the OT world, and it's a concept of you wake up and you have a certain amount of energy. How are you going to spend that energy? How are you going to save it or get it back? So it's a balancing act that you have to figure out what will be the best for you. The goal is to put energy in the bank by resting. Deposit energy by resting to strengthen your account. Does this kind of make sense? Always keep a little energy in the bank for emergencies. So I like that. It's tangible. It makes sense. And that's a frame of mind you may want to start getting into when you think about how are you going to stretch your energy throughout the day. Prioritizing. Learn to say no. Delegate what you can. Do you find that you really are doing more than you need to? Letting go of some things is okay. It's hard when we're perfectionists and well, I used to do this, and if I give it up, that means the disease is taking me. That's not true. You're freeing yourself. You are becoming more independent by doing that. Pacing is real important, and I tell people, don't start something that you can't stop for the most part. And then we can't do that with everything in life. But mowing the lawn, do it in the morning, part of it, come into rest, and then do the backyard the next day. I mean, that's kind of an extreme example. But be really able to pace yourself to stop and rest as you need to. Resist procrastination and let go of guilt. I think that doesn't need any more explanation. But just don't be too hard on yourself is what I try to get across to people. And again, that's easy for me to say. You can start evaluating my life and find a lot of things you could talk to me about. Rest is one of the most important strategies for increasing your energy. Rules for rest. You'll be able to complete more activities if you rest. You will feel better overall. You will have energy for activities you enjoy, not just chores. Make it a habit. And when I say rest, it doesn't mean sleeping. It means resting for 15 to 20 minutes, and it may be relaxing, listening to music, watching TV, but don't sleep your day away. Here is a daily planner. Again, writing it down. Putting rest into your schedule is important. Analyzing your activities. Using good body mechanics. Work smarter, not harder. Sit down to get ready in the morning. Put a little stool in your bathroom. Sit down to prepare meals. You'll save energy. Little techniques of pushing versus carrying things will save energy. Look at your environment again. Look at the temperature. Look at your lighting. Fluorescent lights, oh, they make you work harder, especially vision problems. So think about your environment. All these little things add up to make some big changes. I just want to show you some pictures here, and I'm kind of speeding this along because our time is running out, but a stool for the kitchen. Again, this is going to be a cart with wheels. Ooh, that was a little fast. I apologize. But another thing that occupational therapists teach people is how to use assistive devices for everyday activities, and they increase independence, safety, and energy. An example that I'll show you here is aids to help with dressing. Now, if I can get my little tools here. This is a sock aid right here, and that's to help get on socks, especially if you have a hard time bending over and reaching for things. Use a sock aid to get your socks on, or reachers. Some of you have those. That's that upper thing. Reach things instead of stretching and overextending yourself. There are many different aids for dressing that can make it easier and save energy. So keep that in consideration, and I'll be giving you resources on where you can obtain some of these things. Bathing and toileting, simplifying your bathing and toileting, sitting down to bathe. These are just some examples of different bath chairs. Here's another bath chair that extends over the side of the tub so you don't have to step into the tub risking slipping and falling. A grab bar is a great idea for bathing. And a grab bar, not the setup you see here, one 12-inch grab bar that's vertical, just like this. Oops, I don't think you saw that. Up and down like that can be helpful. And I also suggest if you get a grab bar, don't get smooth chrome because those are slippery. Get some texture on the rail to help hold on better. What you're seeing more now are these suction cup grab bars that do work. You can put those anywhere. Those are great. Eating. Some people have challenges eating because they are lacking some coordination and hand strength. There are tools, built-up grips to help you hold on to things, save energy, rocker knives to cut food with one hand, adaptive devices to make your everyday activities a lot easier. Getting in and out of bed. I just want to quick make a point that that is a leg lift on the left, and that when you have real weak legs, getting up into bed or getting your legs into the car or over the side of the tub can make a big difference. The other picture to the right is a bed rail that can make getting in and out of bed more efficient and safe. You can also make a bed rail using an everyday chair. And in the picture that you see here, you can tie the leg of the leg of the bed to the leg of the chair, and that could serve as a bed rail. I'm concerned about our time. I have a lot more about adapting your home and your kitchen, making things more simple. When you get this lecture tomorrow, you can read through this and it's very self-explanatory, just some simple ideas to make it easier for you to manipulate your environment, putting things within easy reach, sliding things on countertops instead of holding them, using electrical appliances. But if you go through this again on your own, it will make a lot of sense. I'm going to zip along here because I want to talk about so much more, but I'm going to double click ahead here in the lecture. And I want you to take some time on your worksheet to see if you have any suggestions that I've talked about that you think you can start implementing into your daily life to save energy and extend energy. Write those down. What are the tools you think you can use? And these are tools that you could just pick up tomorrow and start doing. You don't have to go to the store to buy it. It's hard to make changes, and Dr. Engstrom in the last webinar on motivation commented and talked about how do you make changes. You need to be ready for change. It has to come within and at small steps. There's been some research through the University of Minnesota, and there was a study a couple of years ago that looked at 169 participants, people with MS, that said fatigue interfered with their daily life. And there was a 6-week course on energy conservation going into more detail of what we talked about today. And at the conclusion of the 6 weeks, there was a significant improvement, as well as a whole year later, people maintained this improvement, lessening fatigue, increasing energy. So everything I talked about is not rocket science, but it does make an impact, and it can help you to start taking control over your fatigue and reducing or increasing your energy. And there was just published this last month of January 2011, a woman by the name of Cara Stout out of the University of Chicago has taken that 6-week program of energy conservation and has addressed it to individuals. It's fabulous. So if you feel that you still don't have a sense of getting a control over your fatigue, I recommend that you go to get a referral from your doctor to an occupational therapist or a physical therapists, and we can help work this with you and engage you so you do feel a difference. I think I should stop right there and see where we're at, Maureen, if we can address any more questions or if we have to conclude it.
We'll just get through a couple of the questions and comments just real quickly.
That would be great.
There were just such good comments. I thought I would just go through them real quickly. Someone suggested that making a to-do list in a day timer is great to remember, but the list keeps growing. I find it best to look at it each day and pick 2 things I have to do no matter what. It works. Choose how to best use time and energy.
Right.
One person said when you were talking about taking time for yourself, take time to help others. Get your mind off yourself. Volunteer and hang out with friends.
Ooh, I like that.
And when you're talking about how to talk to others about fatigue, this woman put in, it feels like I'm walking through waist-deep water with my left leg only. And one more suggestion, MEAD, M-E-A-D, makes a planner with monthly calendar and pages with weekly at-a-glance page with room for enough notes. This person finds that one helpful.
I like that one too. And you can get those at like Office Max or Target Walmarts.
Great. So we'll just get through 2 quick questions. As an OT, this person asks, what are jobs that are conducive to people with fatigue who still need or want to work? Well,
what I want to do is immediately refer you to the National MS Society. There are people that are employed by them that work specifically with that question of yours, because it's really important to know, are you really ready to change your course of work or decrease your hours? Could some things be changed and modified that allows you to work more? Can you work a little bit from your home? You know, what are some strategies that you can implement? And I think you really need a trained professional in that area that can help you work through this. Do you go on disability? Do you not? So look at the National MS Society webpage and look under Occupation and Work Role, and you'll find some great valuable resources.
Great. And the last question for the night asks, why are our minds working harder? This is when you were talking about the relationship between cognition and fatigue.
Well, that's a multi-layered answer, because your minds are working harder because your whole body is working harder. Number one, MS can affect your higher executive function of your brain. So there could be some, just like it affects the muscles of your legs or arms, it could slow the pace of processing in your brain. So it's a direct correlation with the disease, as well as a correlation with just you're concentrating maybe on so much. You know, think about it. You're thinking of 3 things that you have to do, but your focus is on walking from A to B, and you're weak and you're concerned about your balance, and it's taking so much energy just to do that, you forget what you were going to do. So it's multi-layered, and it's something that I just go back to simplifying. Don't expect so much out of yourself. Think of one thing at a time. Do things that are most important to you when you have the most energy. So you kind of got to break it down, and it's really dependent on the time and day.
That was a great way to wrap it up. I want to thank you so much, Anne, and a big thanks to the participants who joined us on this webinar. Anne, do you have any closing remarks?
I would want to thank you again, and I apologize that I didn't get through some of the slides. They are self-explanatory. When you get it tomorrow, it will make sense to you. This is a hard subject to reduce to an hour, but I strongly encourage you to seek out rehabilitation. If fatigue is really a dominant force in your life, just take it one step at a time, start small, and seek some rehabilitation help if you need to. Thank you.
That's great. So the next webinar, like Anne said earlier, is March 8th, and it's Complementary and Alternative Medicines presented by Jennifer Smirta. You can register for this and our other webinars at mscando.org. And thanks again for staying on a little bit later for the call. For those participating live tonight, as soon as the presentation is over, you will see a survey that appears on your computer screen. So please take a moment to complete the survey and help us to continue to improve our webinars. We value your feedback and input. So thanks again. Have a great night.